Good morning. This is an open meeting of the United States Securities and Exchange Commission on February 24th, 2010. Today, the Commission is considering a rule that would restrict short selling when a stock is experiencing significant downward price pressure. It is a rule that is designed to preserve investor confidence and promote market efficiency. Today's rule grows out of the lessons learned 2 years ago when the market began to drop precipitously. At that time, the Commission took a series of emergency and temporary actions over a 3-month span, in part to respond to the market volatility and rapid and steep price declines in securities. While we must always be prepared to take additional action in the future, I believe it is important for the Commission and the markets to have in place a measure that creates certainty about how trading restrictions will operate during periods of stress and volatility. Under today's proposed rule, a circuit breaker would be triggered anytime a stock has dropped 10% in one day. At that point, short selling would only be permitted in a security if the price is above the current national best bid. The reason this rule makes sense is because it recognizes that short selling can potentially have both a beneficial and a harmful impact on the market, depending on the circumstances. When investors engage in short selling, they are in effect borrowing a stock to sell it to another investor. At a later time, they must buy back the stock to replace the one they sold. Instead of the usual order for a transaction where an investor wants to buy low and sell high, a short seller wants to sell high and later buy back low. In arriving at the rule we are considering, the Commission was cognizant of the benefits that short selling provides to the markets. As we've noted many times, short selling can play an important and constructive role, such as by providing market liquidity and pricing efficiency. However, we are also concerned that excessive downward price pressure on individual securities, accompanied by the fear of unconstrained short selling, can destabilize our markets and undermine investor confidence. Today's rule, which we refer to as the alternate uptick rule, addresses these concerns. First, it will prevent short selling, including potentially manipulative or abusive short selling, from further driving down the price of a security that has experienced a 10% price decline. Limiting the potential for abuse is an important goal of these rules. And second, it will enable long sellers to stand in the front of the line and sell their shares before any short sellers once the circuit breaker is triggered. During the Commission's history, the practice of short selling has garnered an enormous amount of interest. In 1938, the Commission enacted former Rule 10A1, commonly known as the uptick rule. That rule prohibited investors from short selling an exchange-listed security unless the sale price of the security had previously ticked up. The former uptick rule remained virtually unchanged until the Commission authorized a study in 2004. That study assessed the functionality and necessity of the price test restrictions in place at that time. Following the year-long pilot study, the Commission ultimately eliminated all short sale price test restrictions in 2007. Since that time, the global economic environment has changed dramatically, and the markets have experienced extreme volatility. Beginning in 2007, market volatility increased not only in the U.S., but in every major stock market around the world. With worsening market conditions came an erosion in investor confidence, which in turn triggered calls for renewed short selling restrictions, including from investors and issuers. In 2008, the Commission then passed 4 temporary emergency orders, including orders that imposed pre-borrow requirements on short sales for 19 different stocks, a ban on short sales for almost 1,000 financial stocks, certain short sale disclosure requirements, and measures related to naked short selling. In addition, the Commission subsequently adopted certain of these measures as final rules, in part to further the Commission's goals of addressing potentially abusive naked short selling. For example, we adopted a naked short selling anti-fraud rule, and we also adopted a rule that requires broker-dealers to promptly purchase or borrow securities to deliver on a short sale. Even with these final actions, concerns regarding short selling persist. With these concerns in mind, the Commission is today considering whether to impose certain short selling restrictions. Specifically, the alternative uptick rule the Commission is considering would work as follows. A circuit breaker would be triggered for a security any day in which the price declines by 10% or more from the prior day's closing price. Once the circuit breaker has been triggered, the alternative uptick rule would apply to short sale orders in that security for the remainder of the day as well as the following day. The alternative uptick rule generally would apply to equity securities that are listed on a national securities exchange, whether traded on an exchange or in the over-the-counter market. And under the rule, trading centers would be required to establish, maintain, and enforce policies and procedures that are reasonably designed to prevent the execution or display of a prohibited short sale. The rule the Commission is considering today is a result of a thorough and deliberative process. We proposed a set of price test restrictions last April for comment. We held a roundtable in May, and we put out a subsequent request for additional comment in August. All of this resulted in more than 4,300 comments discussing both the merits and the shortcomings of each of our proposals. I believe the alternative uptick rule strikes the right balance. Before I turn this over to Robert Cook, I want to thank the staff of the Division of Trading and Markets for their tremendous work on this matter, specifically Robert, Jamie Bergagliano, Josephine Tao, Tori Crane, Katrina Wilson, and Angela Moody. I also want to thank their colleagues in the Office of the General Counsel, David Becker, Meredith Mitchell, Janice Mitnick, and Cynthia Ginsburg, as well as our colleagues in the Division of Risk, Strategy, and Financial Innovation, Henry Hu, Bruce Krause, Amy Edwards, Tim McCormick, and Celia Collio. And from my office, I particularly want to thank Jaime Workey. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Robert, to hear more about the Division's recommendations.